I did not know how long I was going to stay there, hoping it would be for a long time. What a colorful dream city it was. The sky remained grey in a brooding dark cloudscape, and overcast most of the time, but the city buildings painted the scene in hues of charm and a variety of magical colors. Whenever I visited this city, I always felt at home. I frequented a number of coffee shops, for there were people I could talk to, and also help improve my language skills. Although not many people could be seen around, those who worked in the shops were usually very friendly towards me. However, I later discovered that a number of locals resented people coming from Middle Eastern countries, including Turkey. They often called them dirty Turks or foreign bastards, which I thought was very ugly. I kept silent about that issue, for I was a newcomer and was not going to spoil things. I thought people normally accepted each other as they were in a civilized country. I suppose I was learning more about the human world. There were no children to be seen anywhere in this city during the holidays, as they were obviously occupied with a variety of activities elsewhere, perhaps even sporting events through their education system. They were probably cared for after school hours through some government authority. It appeared as if Germans could not waste time with their children, let alone their families, because they were occupied with more than one job. I was certainly going to learn a lot more about their lifestyle as time went by. For instance, guest workers from foreign countries were given jobs normally the locals would never touch. And yet many have resented those from elsewhere. I chose to follow this sage advice. Seek the open road, forget the destination, and enjoy the ride. Remembering my arrival at the Strohbach's address for the very first time, discovering how excited they were about my decision to remain in Germany, hopefully permanently, happier still about my desire to pay what was owed on my part, and agreeing to share the living expenses, they could not contain their joy. It gave me enough information about the German way of living. Fairness was my motto, and I knew that this part of the experience was going to remain that way. I mentioned my desire to obtain a reel-to-reel tape recording device a little earlier because that was the only quality system to capture my impressions of existence surrounding me, the sounds of people, friends, and the music, as well as listening to my previous recordings, which I had brought with me. I knew that in days and years to come, new ways of recording would become available, and I was going to adopt them, and keep capturing my impressions for future reference. It was going to be a lifelong interest for good reason. As the years rolled by, despite much opposition from so-called close friends, and even my future family's criticisms, the value of recording was going to be better understood, just like the simple photographs I occasionally captured. When the time came, we went to buy my very first recorder. Although an older and bulky one, it was a very efficient Telefunken. By the following week, I was recording my own experiences, music, and listening to my previous recordings. I could not get enough of it, and was so very happy. It was like the fulfillment of a wish I had for a long while. There was a little child in me, and I had to look after that too. Every girl and boy needs their toy. This way, when there were not so happy occasions, one could let the sun shine again. and having a simple toy like the one I had meant that I could deal with those issues more easily. Interestingly, even listening to the sounds of my friends, like those from Ankara enjoying a musical session, singing and talking with my brother, mother, aunt, and our cousin, Georg, hearing their laughter again was comforting. I needed to feel that connection from time to time. Turkey is one of the most beautiful and historically rich countries in the world, and some musical expressions coming alive in those recordings were haunting, but the country was not a home to me. However, soon I was to discover whether Germany could become my permanent home. According to popular belief, one could become unbearably homesick after a short period of time. But I did not feel it at all for a very long time because I was in the world, could travel to places and discover beauty everywhere. I could create brand new memories, but the more I heard my mother's voice, the more I felt the loss of not being able to greet her with a good morning in English, and the more I missed her. I remember back home, and again I'm repeating myself, whenever a Mormon or witness came to the door, she was furious, as she did not want to entertain nonsense, as she called it, responding harshly to them. Some of those witnesses, noticing her reading coffee grounds, considered her a witch. But she was not. It was a traditional pastime of the Greeks, Egyptians, Armenians, and Turks, and this tradition is an ancient one. Under all circumstances, one can always find a way to live peacefully, joyfully, and without harm to anybody. Whatever we do to others, it will be done unto us. Whatever we give, we receive. Whatever we shout at a mountain will echo and come back to us repeatedly. Sing a happy song, and the world will sing it back to you. The Strohbachs were a little surprised how quickly I was improving with my German. They may not have realized that I was training myself to think like they did. This way, daily expressions of the locals became easier to understand. They did not realize that I was taking part in a German language course as well, because I was keen to understand the spoken language and its grammar. Listening to the radio broadcasts and television programs presented in their language proved to be of great assistance. Interestingly, Strohbachs did not have a television, radio, or any music in their home. When outdoors, at work, or studying at the university, I always aimed to converse with others in their language. Yet there were a number of people insistingly trying to talk to me in broken German. I remember asking them if they spoke German. If they could speak properly to me, I would learn their language. Many were surprised to discover how eager I was to learn their mother tongue. I believed that it would take a number of years to speak like they did, but at least I could converse with them reasonably well. I also believe they appreciated my attitude. I knew one of my grandmothers spoke either German or Yiddish, but I was not sure how well. Unfortunately, most of the voice recordings I made were lost by the negligence of my future partner, and those grands passed on before my departure from the so-called parental home. While the Strohbachs still lived in Kirchheim Tech, we often frequented the nearby hills, villages, and townships. Sometimes we did so just to have a drive, take long walks while chatting on all kinds of subjects without worrying about the time factor. Sometimes we just went out to higher grounds to admire the city lights at night. During one of those nights, Siegfried spoke of his encounter with an orange-colored, round, and intelligently controlled UFO. Apparently he was sitting on the top of a hill, and looking up into the starry sky, he noticed a small orange-colored light which moved slowly, and then started to glide to where he was seated. When closer, its huge size became apparent. He stared at it for a while, but could not remember anything else, saying that he thought he must have fallen asleep. He mentioned this story often, and showed great excitement every time he spoke about it. Interestingly, no matter where they were, at home or in a restaurant, they used to bend their heads in silent prayer. But occasionally Siegfried would verbally utter them. I found this to be a unique tradition of the witnesses. They expected me to do such Thanksgiving prayers silently, but my prayers almost always ended up praising the cook. For some reason, they did not question me about it. Understandably, I was not yet absolutely cognizant with their tongue. When I bowed my head with them out of respect, I used to count in my mind from 1 to 5, or sometimes up to 35. It was very unusual, but nevertheless, as it was their custom, I felt the need to show respect. In my early days in Kirchheim Tech, I was introduced to an Armenian family. The husband was a tailor, but had not been practicing his skills for a while. They were working as a husband and wife team for a cutlery company in a factory opposite my bedroom window in the distance. Although quite far, it used to be extraordinarily noisy, especially in the very early hours of the morning, when most of the neighborhood was still asleep. I also remember Ruth and Siegfried attending the very first day of the Armenian family's little daughter Diana's school ceremony, as was the German custom, and lots of photographs were taken, one of which was given to me. Whenever I look at that and other photographs of those weekends when I used to visit them, I remember it with all the color, laughter, and gossip. The Armenian couple used to invite me to their home and ask me to visit them often, giving me an open invitation. They had settled in Germany long before my arrival, originating from Istanbul with the intention never to return back. They too were into witnessing activities, and it seemed as though I was surrounded by a huge propaganda machine, although I was certain that I could survive it somehow. For them, I was one of their brothers and a good friend. I spoke their language and had an ear to listen to them, but at least I was not being preached at. That in itself was worthwhile, to have friends like them. They did not force what they believed on people like the other witnesses. Maybe their faith was not as strong. They could not attend all those important activities as they claimed, for they were so busy working.